Fires, recession, unemployment, and growing deficits. 2016 will go down as one of the most difficult years in the past 3 decades. Here then are my top 10 business stories of the year. The wildfires in Fort McMurray. It began as a small fire in the forest on May the 1st, but it soon escalated into a raging inferno, and within days forced more than 80,000 people to leave their homes in Fort McMurray. By the time it was all over, the fires had destroyed more than 2,400 buildings and become the single largest insurable disaster in Canadian history, with a bill that topped more than $3.8 billion. On the economic front, an entire business sector was shut down for weeks, and people were unable to go home or go to work. The fire also closed down oil sands production, slashing output by at least 40 million barrels in total, and in turn it pushed the provincial deficit up by almost $500 million. The fires also chopped Alberta's GDP by about 0.6% for the year. If the rest of the country needed any more evidence of the importance of the oil sands, this was it, as the loss of oil production caused Canada's second quarter growth in the economy to shrink in the April to June timeframe, in main part due to the lack of oil sands output. Number 2, a struggling economy. Layoffs, the highest unemployment rate in decades. Canada's downtown office vacancy rate topping 23%, falling real estate and retail sales, and a record provincial deficit. Businesses big and small were going under. Everywhere one turned in 2016, it seemed that the second year of recession in Alberta had exacted a toll, with the fallout seeping beyond the energy sector into almost every nook and cranny of the economy. The unemployment rate in Alberta topped 9% in November, and it was over 10% in Calgary in the same month. More than 222,000 people were on unemployment rolls by the end of the year, and Calgary had the highest unemployment rate among all the major cities in the country. The impact of the recession was also felt on the finances of both the province and of individuals and of businesses. Personal bankruptcies rose, and many companies were struggling with debt. The province was facing a record $10.9 billion deficit, and retail sales dipped by more than 2% for the year. Housing starts, meanwhile, were off 40%. The number of rigs drilling for oil and gas plunged as capital investment shrunk, with only about 3,500 wells expected to be finished throughout the year. In one word, this recession was brutal. Number 3, the Great Canadian Pipeline debate. If Albertans were looking for a little bit of good economic news, they got it on the pipeline front in 2016, while the Alberta government and the oil patch, which had been pressing for more than a year to see improved market access, finally got the news it wanted. The Trudeau government had approved an oil pipeline expansion to the west coast. In November, the Trudeau government gave the green light to the Trans Mountain expansion as well as the Line 3 pipeline in late November, but rejected the Northern Gateway project and instituted a tanker ban off the north coast of British Columbia. For an energy sector looking for greater market access, this was a significant moment. Number 4, OPEC and oil prices. The other piece of good economic news for the year came from oil prices, but it didn't start that way. Crude oil began the year around $36 a barrel and soon plunged to below $27 in both January and February, amid a glut of oil on the world markets. However, by the summer and into the fall, the situation began to improve, and with a deal between the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries in November, we saw the crude oil prices go back up above $50 a barrel. Number 5, pipeline mergers and acquisitions. It's now easier to buy pipelines than build them. At least that was the motto when Calgary-based Enbridge said that it acquired Spectra Energy of Houston in a blockbuster $37 billion takeover deal announced in September. Meanwhile, its rival TransCanada acquired Columbia Pipeline Group in March for $13 billion, giving it a bigger stake internationally. Number 6, Alberta's power play. Alberta's NDP government began to unwind deregulation in 2016 by altering the electricity markets, preparing to offer billions to renewable energy sources, phasing out coal power plants, and paying the owners more than $1.3 billion to shut their plants down early. And if that wasn't enough, the government is moving to a new capacity market, and it also engaged in a high-profile fight with utilities over power purchase arrangements being returned to the government. All in all, it was the biggest changes Albertans have seen in the power industry since the decline deregulation in the 1990s. Number 7, Trump time. Donald Trump's surprising victory and the U.S. presidential campaign has breathed new life into the Keystone XL oil pipeline. But it also could mean some possible troubles ahead for the North American Free Trade Arrangement. Keystone was blocked by the Obama administration last year, but TransCanada's oil pipeline, which would move crude from northern Alberta all the way down to the U.S. Gulf Coast, may soon get a new lease on life. Number 8, the bovine TB outbreak in Alberta. The province declared a state of emergency this fall, and the federal and provincial governments have offered almost $17 million in emergency aid, while at least 10,000 high-risk cattle are expected to be destroyed following a bovine tuberculosis outbreak which occurred in southern Alberta. 6 cases of the disease were confirmed, discovered after a first cow was found to have the disease when it was slaughtered in the United States back in September, and it was later traced to a ranch near Jenner, Alberta. Earls Beef. In the spring, the Vancouver restaurant chain Earls found itself in hot water and was making headlines when it announced a new policy to source its beef out of the United States, saying that with a new humane beef policy, it couldn't find the requisite animals in Canada. However, following a backlash from consumers and even Saskatchewan's premier, the company said it made a mistake and decided to find its beef at home. Number 10, mergers, acquisitions, and hostile deals. In a down market in 2016, we also saw plenty of mergers and acquisitions and some hostility. Suncor Energy won its $4.9 billion hostile takeover bid for Canadian Oil Sands Limited and secured its grip on Syncrude. Other deals included Total Energy Services trying to bid for Savannah Energy Services and Chemtrade and Connexus merging. We also saw a mega merger in the fertilizer industry, with Potash Corporation and Agrium agreeing to join forces. All in all, it was a busy year on the M&A front.